All right, y'all. So I'm with the groom, y'all.
Yes.
This is it, man.
This is it. I'm excited.
We're about to cross over into the good life.
Yes, thank you, Jesus.
Brittany, how do you feel?
I feel great. I'm excited. Oh, y'all see
Yeah. Look at this.
So both my parents both had previous marriages. They both were divorcees. And so them coming together was due to me being created. And so I was in the womb on their wedding day.
I grew up in like a semi-Christian home. So my mother was like a believer, and then my father, he received Christ, but he really didn't live like that Christian walk. So my mom was the one that took us to church. She was more of the spiritual example and figure.
Once they had me, I think for them, they were in a place of wanting to really retry marriage. But my dad not being a believer and not, being a man of faith, my mom came to know Christ upon me being born. And so it did create in our home a sense of division, because my mom was now wanting to be the woman who goes to church and prays and follows God, and my dad was still just wanting to be, hey, a man that provides for the home, but all other than that, hey, enjoying himself in regards to, going out on the weekends and just doing that whole thing there and keeping his lifestyle.
Very unhealthy in the beginning when I was younger. There were a lot of arguments. My dad left. We've moved, been evicted a lot.
So growing up, it was kind of confusing between what is our value system as a family.
My mom was a woman of prayer. She prayed us all through. She prayed my father into the place that he is today. But looking back at my life now as a married woman and just maturing, you realize that, man, what I experienced as a child really has affected me as an adult, and then raising my own children, seeing the fears that will surface in regards to parenting them, even in regards to even trusting my husband to be that spiritual figure, because I grew up not really knowing what it looked like to have a man who was leading spiritually and naturally.
How I navigated my parents' inability to come to a place of agreement in how we would run our home, how they would run their home, how they would lead, how they would be as a family, opened the door for us to have to figure it out on our own.
Being married now, I've seen that I've at times have in my heart kind of disrespected and dishonored Jamal's position in the house, and that led to feeling as if I had to compete with him, or I've had to kind of prove myself that I'm as spiritual as you. My
parents' marriage was one that it definitely was a cover-up, right, in regards to we will act like everything is good in front of the kids, but then behind closed doors, never really seeing them truly display how they really felt with one another. And so for me, I remember the time, that my parents would have moments and challenging arguments. And this is where my mom definitely pulled me aside and had times with me where she would encourage me in regards to me one day being married and saying, hey, when you get married, this is how you should treat your wife. When you get married, this is how you should treat the love of your life and your family and your children.
Seeing my mother fight and still stand in the midst of, troubles and confusion and chaos, I believe that it affected me in a positive way as well as a negative way, because I know in my heart there were moments to where I saw it. As a child, I was a very sensitive child, very aware of what was happening around me, where even at 8-9 years old, I could see things were happening, conversations were taking place, or arguments were going forth, and I would see, man, hey, this doesn't feel right. I could see the sadness in my dad's eyes, I could see the sadness in my mom's eyes, and at that age, I wanted to fix it, or I wanted to be the best that I could be, to not add on to what was already happening.
My dad was one of the hardest working men that I've ever met in my life, and would always ensure we never ever went without. And so growing up, I respect my father for being a man that was willing to set a standard for work, and I believe for him, because of his father's standard for work, that's where he got that from. but just learning from my father to my grandfather that the men of our family have always had a challenging time with being in tune with their feelings and being in tune with their emotions, and they valued productivity and they valued work ethic over emotional stability and emotional intelligence. And so with that being said, it's very, or even just the overall concept of nurturing and love and quality time. And they show those things through provision. If I provide for you, if I give to you, if I make sure you're taken care of, then that is the way that I'm telling you that I love you. As God began to take me through the season of focusing on me and healing from my past and really learning some of the things that I was seeing wrong in regards to marriage and a lot of concepts and honestly like myths that people believe when you're in the church, He began to challenge me on those concepts, and it opened my eyes to marriage in a whole new way, because I will say that I had a fairy tale view of marriage, and the moment you meet the right person, that everything will just be okay, everything will be all right, you won't go through any issues, any problems. All those things God began to challenge during that season in time. I really gave God my story, because at this point I was writing my own story. God, this is how I wanted to happen. I wanted that story where I met her in the grocery store and everything just came into this perfect fairy tale story. And I one day was like, God, I give you my story. How you want to do it, you can do it.
So in 2009, I had created a Facebook page, and I was there adding people. I actually found Jamal Miller on a mutual ministry page called International House of Prayer.
One day, I was on Facebook and I saw a friend request, and when I saw a friend request from a woman that I didn't know who she was, I accepted the friend request. It didn't take anything big a deal at that point. We were part of this prayer group that we had both been a part of, but nothing like super, big that would cause us to have to be in a relationship.
So that was 2009, and in 2012, I began to see like his pictures, in Facebook, and we began to like communicate on like Twitter and Instagram and periodically on Facebook.
She had a ministry for women called Romans Ministries, and I just began to see everything that she was doing, and I just kind of got the courage to just send her a DM, and I just sent her a message to kind of encourage her on her ministry. Didn't think anything big of it, didn't think anything of it at all in that moment, and she actually replied back. Then the relationship moved forward into Instagram. We began to follow each other there, liking each other's photos and commenting on each other's posts.
We periodically communicated on Facebook to where he saw that I lived in California, and he had some friends who were planting a church near me. So he was like, hey, I have some friends that are planting a church out there. It may be cool for you to check it out if you're interested. And
one day I get a text message from my pastor, and he is inviting me over to his house because his wife had a dream. So I'm going over to my pastor's house to talk about this dream that his wife had. And once I get to their house, he begins to ask me about my dating life. And I'm like, he's like, so do you got any potentials, anything happening right now? And I'm like, nope, nothing at all. There's nothing much going on. Don't have any potentials. And he's like, really? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, well, my wife had a dream. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, she had a dream about your future wife, and that you really need to have us talk to you about what you should be looking for. And soon as he said that, Natasha popped in my mind. And I'm like, well, okay, before you continue, I was like, there's this girl we've been kind of chatting online. He's like, online? I was like, yeah, we've been chatting on Facebook. And he's like, okay. And I'm like, yeah, but nothing serious. We just been going back and forth for a few months. And he's like, well, show me a picture of her. So I show him a picture of her. And he's like, baby Bishop, this girl is beautiful. And I'm like, I know, she's beautiful. I was like, she's a woman of God. She loves Jesus. I was like, there's something different about her. He's like, so what's happening with it? And I was like, well, she lives in California, number one, and we are basically complete strangers. And he's like, okay. And I said, well, okay, there's something else too. And he's like, well, what is it? I was like, man, I think she's taller than me. And he's like, come on. And I'm like, no, for real, I really think she's taller than me. And I was like, and that's just a lot to try to figure out. And he calls his wife. He's like, babe, come here. So his wife comes into, to the kitchen where we're talking, and he shows her the photo of Natasha, and she's like, oh my gosh, she's beautiful. And so we go through every single one of her photos, because then I tell her, I'm like, yeah, but I think she's taller. And he's like, let's figure it out. So we're going through all her photos to see, like, comparing different people. Like, okay, she looks tall, she looks short. He's like, hey, I don't think she's taller than you. I think you should just message her again and see if she's interested in getting to know you more. And I'm like, no, I don't know if I should do that. She's gonna reject me. No. He's like, hey, I think you should do it. And my pastor has a lot of influence in my life and someone I really respect. And so for him to encourage me to do it was kind of like, okay, like I'm going to really trust his leadership. So that night I leave his house and I pray. I'm like, God, I'm going to step out and message this girl, and I'm leaving it up to you, right? Nothing big, no expectations, just going to see what happens.
One day I get a message from him on Facebook, and in this message, it wasn't just a, hey, how you doing? I like what you're doing. It was like,
hey, Natasha, I'm unsure on how to go about this, considering this is not something I do every day. I'm stepping out on complete faith and curiosity in order to be real with what I see. You're an amazing woman of God, and you have truly inspired me. Even though we have never met in person, I feel like I know you. After weeks of thinking and receiving clarity from my spiritual leaders, I've been led to write this message. This is not normal for me, but I'm learning to conquer fears. Natasha, I would really like to get to know you. Jamal. So after I sent her this message, I just knew that she was not going to message back. I knew that she was going to be like, this dude is one of them crazy guys online that's trying to get hooked up and trying to get to know me. And I was just I was prepared for rejection. And she actually messaged me back. And I remember my phone lit up, and I ran to my phone, and I was blown away that she had responded back.
So I thought, man, you know what? This isn't just some guy that just is having a lonely night and wants to send me a message. He's talked about me to people that are important to him.
So she gave me her number, and we scheduled a time to talk. And on the first conversation, it was amazing. I was super nervous, but the moment that we began to talk, it was like she just brought me to a place of ease and comfort, and I was able to just be myself. And we really began to talk about purpose, and we began to talk about things that we like to eat, restaurants, and just really cool things. And it was just like a super chill conversation.
And I remember, I hadn't told anybody that I had even gotten a message and inquiry with starting a relationship with a guy on Facebook. I think there was a little bit of shame or embarrassment of okay, if I tell people this, even in the beginning stages, is this going to be weird? So I really kept it to myself. So I remember sitting in the car and him calling me and hearing his voice. And I remember I was like, man, he has a nice voice. He has a nice voice. The way he communicated, the way that he even drew me in, it was a very welcoming, hey, I'm here, type of voice, to where it was as if he had planned it in a sense. It just felt very organic, and it was very refreshing.
What was really cool that night, I needed to study because I was in school finishing some courses, and she actually texted me that later on that evening with some worship songs for me to listen to while I was studying.
I believe that night that we talked that he had an exam in the morning, and after we conversated, I just said, hey, you know what? I hope you do great on your exam. And then I was listening to a song, and I thought hey, this would be a good song for him to study to. So I sent it to him.
A few weeks later, we scheduled our first Skype session to actually see one another virtually. And that was cool because now I was able to kind of put a face to her name and meet her in that and kind of experience her personality a little bit better. And so from there, it was just, everything was just really smooth, going really smooth. And then I had a meeting with my pastor to update him. And this is about maybe 2 or 3 months into it. And he's like, okay, it's time for y'all to meet face to face. We got on a call, and I'm like, hey, my pastor really believes it's time that we should meet face to face. And he's like, okay. And I was like, well, I'm not sure how we want to go about it. And that's when we decided, hey, we think it'd probably be best for you to come to Chicago, because if I come to California, that would be me meeting you face to face for the first time and meeting your family face to face for the first time. And that's a lot. How about you come to Chicago? I don't have any family here. It's just my friends and my church family that's here. So there's not a lot of pressure. And we have a church conference that we're having. that you could come to the conference and experience Chicago to where it's not like a weekend of just me and you having to be together the whole time.
He was actually raised in Louisiana. So his family lived there and my family was in California. So we thought, hey, let's meet in Chicago, where we can just, see each other in a mutual place and figure out if this is something that we want to continue with.
She spoke with her spiritual leaders and her parents to get approval to come to Chicago. And it was just like, man, like it was a really cool build up to like us meeting face to face for the first time.
Like he was just very encouraging. He was very open to me. He was a great listener. He encouraged me. He inspired me. He was consistent. He was intentional. So I was already seeing those signs through, just communicating. Because for me, like I said, even in the beginning, was even him saying that, hey, I'm going to call you when I'm going to call you, really spoke to me. And I think too, looking back at my life and how I grew up, that at times there was a lot of inconsistency where I didn't have a lot of people in my life that kept their word. So when I met him and I saw that, man, okay, when he says he's going to do something, like he's doing it. And it's not just with actions, but it's also with his heart. It's with his words. It's with how he treats me.
I said, I want to tell you now, if you come and you're not attracted to me, it's okay. We can just be friends and you can enjoy the weekend. I was like, and same here. I said, I think, if I'm not attracted to you, I think we should be able to communicate that this weekend and make this thing real. Because she at this point was asking like, hey, what do we do after Chicago? I'm like, hey, let's just take it one day, a step at a time. You come to Chicago, we meet face to face, and we can take it from there.
I told my family that I wanted to officially meet him. So I would be traveling to Chicago to see him. And what I think really helped them is knowing that it wasn't just going to be me and him alone the whole weekend. I was actually going out there to help support him for a church conference that he was speaking at. So that kind of brought me peace too, in knowing that, hey, like I get to kind of enjoy what's happening, and then we can figure out what's, going to come between him and I.
When she flew in and me waiting for her down at Midway Airport in Chicago, I had a cup of coffee for her. And as soon as I see her standing at the top of the escalator coming down, just as beautiful she was in all the photos, just as beautiful she was in all the Skype meetings, I knew that this girl was the one. And she came down, we hugged, and it was from there that I was really serious about making her my wife. While we're at a restaurant, I tell her, hey, I want to take this to the next level. Let's make this thing real, let's make it official. And she said she wasn't ready yet. And she said she needed to go back home and really process everything that's happened, which I totally respected. So she went back home, and I remember when I went home after her flying out back to California, and I'm in my room, and this is now the first time that I'm actually quiet with myself for the first time. And I just say out loud, God, Facebook? Are you serious? This is how you wanted me to meet my wife? On Facebook? And I remember God saying in that moment, Jamal, what I do for you, I'm going to do for others. Hey y'all, so sorry for the interruption. So you know how I just said what God will do for us, he'll do for others? Well, it's happening. Because right now we're on the way to Brittany and Rob's wedding, y'all.
Y'all, okay, this is our very first time officiating a wedding for one of our TOU students. So this is very special for us and so full circle.
Absolutely. So we want to take you guys behind the scenes and let y'all see what nobody else is seeing. Let's go. Bro, if you could sum this moment up in one word to encourage folks that are about to be there right where you are, what would you say to them?
I would say purpose, just the importance of purpose and how God has the ability to write our story. He's concerned about our purpose. He's excited about us walking in our purpose. All we have to do is just align with what he has in store for us and just watch him work the magic.
is really cool because it's kind of full circle, because it was more than 7 years ago that I asked God, after meeting Natasha on Facebook, God, why did you have us meet this way? On Facebook, are you serious? And God said, that what I do for you, I'm gonna do for others. And what's crazy is this is exactly how Rob and Brittany met. They met on Facebook, and today we're officiating their wedding.
From the moment I saw your face, I was clear with my intentions. When we connected through Facebook and conversation, I knew something was different. You asked me how my day was. And while it was so simple, it meant something to me that it mattered to you.
I just want to say God is good. I think a lot of times when you go through, unfortunate life circumstances, it's real easy to lose faith and to lose hope. And one of the most amazing things about my marriage to this man is that it is a story of redemption. Yeah. God will change it around and He'll turn it. So I'm just grateful.
So Brittany and Rob are officially married.
Yes, you guys, they have completed all 7 stages of TOU.
And now they about to go into stage 8. All right, y'all, so TOU is here. And we just saw the joining of these two beautiful people. Y'all got some words for everybody?
We hungry.